And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I am your host, Wes Tankersley. We have an awesome guest for you today, another musical artist that, I like interviewing him because I love music and I love being moved by it. And this guy is very passionate about what he does. I'm super excited to have him. He is the lead singer of a band called The Circle View. He's had a couple bands and he's been through a lot of musical transitions and things like that. And it's a really cool story. All right, Lance, round two. Here we go,
guys. Here we go. How's it going, guys? How's everybody doing today?
Yeah. This is a treat. You know, it's always exciting to get to talk to a music artist. It just feels like I don't have a music bone in my body other than the listening, but it is really cool to, talk to people who are passionate about music. So,
yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about music that, we have that in common. We both really love music, and it just brings people together, man. And there was a time on this earth where something like this on every possible level, we were just talking about technology, but on every possible level, something like this wasn't even possible. So I'm just grateful to be here.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful to be here.
The conversation about the technology just is kind of funny to me because we were talking like the first thing that I ever did with technology was play Oregon Trail or Number Munchers, like the old Apple computer and the floppy disk and all that stuff. So it's,
oh my God! I remember the single joystick. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
the single joystick and the red button.
The Atari.
And it was like Elon Musk to have that game system in my house. So right. It was crazy.
Yeah, my cousin still had when I was. Gosh, I bet it's still sitting in his old bedroom at my aunt's house. But he had an Atari, and he had it was just the same thing. That little joystick, the orange button, red button. Man. Fun times.
Fun times. Oh my God. I played so many. I think my favorite one was it's so basic, man, but it was like two little pads that slide up and down, and you're basically playing ping pong. I could play that thing all day.
Yeah.
Pong. There it is.
Yeah.
I could play that all day, man. But yeah, it's just I don't like allowing people to make me feel old because I don't feel as old as I am, but I will say this. My mom lived until she was 52. She died 7 days before her birthday. My biological father made it to 56. So biologically speaking, I'm doing okay. I feel good. I feel healthy. If I can make it to 60, as far as I'm concerned, that's the tits, man. I'm riding a wave for the rest of my life, man. So I don't let people make me feel bad for getting older. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's crazy though, right? Like, because I know you have young kids and I got young kids, and I'm just sitting there like, man, so I didn't have kids until I was my daughter's 10 and I'm 43. So 33 when we had her, but then we were like, we're done. We're only having one. And then my son came along. And he's 2, and I will tell you what, an 8-year difference between having kids, it is aging.
It is. And that's funny that you mentioned that because my older brother is 8 years older than me. Uh-huh. So I definitely understand that. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird, man.
Well, tell us a little bit about you. You are a jack of all instruments, I feel like. We were talking a little bit before when we had a little technical difficulties with myself. And you started out playing the piano, you said.
Right. So starting from the beginning, I started at about 4.5. And I'll tell the story real quick. They had a young performers competition on television, and I want to say it was a young Japanese or maybe Chinese or Korean young girl. She might have been 9 or 10 years old, and she was just blazing on the piano, a classical piece. And I'm told this story from my mom, so I couldn't tell you this from memory. But my mom told this story to me all the time. She said, I walked into the kitchen and I pulled her into the living room and I pointed to the TV and I said, I want to do that, And she took that as a sign. Here's another sign. On the block that we lived on this block with, we lived in an apartment building. We lived on the 3rd floor. there was a main street. Like we lived right at the edge of the block, and across the street from that main street was a piano store.
Mm-hmm.
We went to the piano store, and she asked if it was a woman that owned the store, and she asked if they gave piano lessons, and the woman said, "My son teaches piano lessons," and my mom worked it out, and she bought me an organ and got me lessons. So I got to start taking piano lessons a little bit sooner than normal, because they're really not supposed to start you until 5.
Yeah.
So I banged on that thing for about a year, and it just sort of progressed from there, and I got more acquainted with music and music theory. And right around high school, fast forward to high school, I stuck with it. I had a number of different music teachers depending on the weather, because travel was a big deal for us when I was younger. We didn't always have a car; we had to take the bus, stuff like that. So by the time I got to high school, I went to a Lutheran high school, Luther South in Chicago, and it was a great school. It was an interracial school. It was a lot of different kids. It exposed me to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different family types. And I had friends of all shapes and colors, and it was great. And we all were band geeks. We were all band nerds. So I learned saxophone, I learned drums, I picked up all this stuff from all these different people while I was still taking piano lessons. And on top of that, I grew up in the Baptist church, so my biological father's mother, my grandmother on my father's side, was a master keyboardist. She could play anything, but she blazed on the organ. So we had all assumed that that's where the natural talent came from my grandmother on my father's side. And so I was getting exposed to all of this different, all of these different types of musical culture. And like I said, I had a lot of friends that introduced me to music that I wouldn't have necessarily been exposed to. The same thing goes for my brother, but my brother, if I had to name a single person, my brother had the biggest influence on me musically, because he was my older brother and he was 8 years older than me, and he was my god.
He was listening to some cool shit.
Yeah, he was listening to the coolest shit, man.
Yeah.
And so everything I learned about music, popular music, I learned from my brother. He introduced me to Zeppelin. He introduced me to Cream. He introduced me to Bowie. He introduced me to Prince. He introduced me to Jimi Hendrix. He introduced me to Al Green, Marvin Gaye, Sam Cooke, all the greats. Anybody that's considered a great, and if they were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I learned about it from my brother. So one day, I'm giving you chunks as fast as I can here.
Yep.
One day, my brother, his ritual was that he would listen to music in the bathroom, because that was his sanctuary, because we shared a room and he couldn't have his own space. He would lock himself in the bathroom, open the window in the middle of the afternoon, especially in the summertime, and he had a boom box, and he would just blast his music. And he would just love to and I would hear him just like dancing around in there. And one day he put on this guy, and it was this driving groove. And I was like, who is this guy, man? And I finally snuck into his room, and he listened to a lot of stuff on cassette tape, but he had a lot of vinyl. So I snuck into his room, and I was sneaking around, and I finally found who he was listening to, and it was this guy named Prince. And it was a song called Controversy, and I was like looking at the album cover, and I was not really allowed in Ryan's section of the room. Mm-hmm. His part of the room was off limits, So I was like sneaking around in there, and I was like reading through all the vinyls and all that stuff. And finally I just kind of like approached him like, who is this guy? And he told me everything that he could about Prince. He just sort of explained them to me. And my mom was not having it. She was like, hell to the fuck no. You are not listening to that guy.
He was an odd
You're like
dude.
8 years. Yeah, you're like 8 years old. Why the fuck are you trying to listen to this guy? So long story short, um, I think it was, and this was approaching '84 when Prince like really blew up. And I'm just getting caught up on this guy. And in the meantime, I'm listening to Bowie and I'm listening to Jimi Hendrix and I'm listening to all this other stuff. And finally, and then, obviously Michael Jackson was like a huge deal back then. And
Yeah.
I had the red jacket, and my brother hated that I had the red jacket. He's like, you're a total Michael Jackson. It was like the total Prince. I think a lot of people built that Prince Michael Jackson rivalry up themselves. And it never really was a thing between the actual Prince and Michael Jackson. So my brother was like, "Oh, you're just a Michael Jackson nut. You don't really like Prince." And I was like, and then all of a sudden he drops Purple Rain. And all of my friends are talking about Purple Rain. All of my friends in school are talking about this Purple Rain, Prince and Purple Rain. I'm like, you guys didn't even know anything about Prince. I knew about Prince before you did, So I go home and I'm like, I asked my mom, I'm like, you need to take me to see this movie. I asked my mom to take me to see this movie. So she takes me. There used to be a movie theater in Chicago called Evergreen Plaza. In a mall called Evergreen Plaza. And I think it was called the Evergreen Plaza Theater. And my mom agreed to take me there, and she was very reluctant to do this, but I pleaded and begged and pleaded. And I think my aunts had a little bit to do with it too. They were like, all right, just take him to see the movie. He's a growing boy. It'll be a good experience for him, and so she took me to the movie theater, and I remember just being like blown away. I was like, this is the greatest dude to have ever walked the face of the earth. I don't care what anybody else says. Prince is the bee's knees, man. I'm trying not to curse too much on your podcast. I'm a cursor. I use a lot of profanity, but
I am too.
this dude is the shit, man. He was blowing my mind. So the long and short of it is, he has this like wild sex, like it's not even really a sex scene, but when you're like 10 years old, I think fast forward a couple of years, I think I was 10 when maybe 11. I don't fucking know. Time doesn't exist in my world anymore. I have 2 kids, man. I'm too old for this shit. So anyway, I was a kid. The point is, I was a kid. My mom was like holding my eyes over the semi-sex scene. Like nowadays, that would be considered tame. That sex scene.
Yeah, there's nothing.
But my mom was covering my eyes. Nothing happening. He's like, tickling the vag a little bit through the clothes. Nothing, Yep. But my mom was not having it. So she was covering my eyes. And I didn't get to see that actual scene until I was much older. I remember not being able to see that scene until I was much. And then I finally saw the scene. And I was like, that's it? That's what you were like hiding from me?
This is what I've been waiting for?
So I know, So I remember seeing that movie and I was done. It was a wrap. And then, at that point, I was like, I need to learn everything about this dude. Because even up until that point, I didn't know that he wrote all the songs. I didn't know that on a lot of his earlier albums, he played all the instruments. I didn't know that he was producing and mixing his own stuff. This is like unheard of in that time, that era, Now it's commonplace if you got one of these.
How do you figure that out though? Like at that time, because we have the internet now, but we didn't. Like at that time, there was no internet. Like were you going to the library? Were you looking for books? Were you reading magazines?
I'm under the impression, and I'm just spitballing here, but I'm under the impression that Prince was like from the fucking Zeta Reticuli system or something. That dude was like a fucking alien from another world. Because I genuinely don't know how he was able to pull that stuff off. But there are multiple people corroborating the story. People who were women, mostly women. He preferred female engineers in the room to help him with the technical aspect of making sure the board was working properly and making sure. Suzanne Rogers, the list goes on and on and on of female engineers who worked with him. They all said the same thing. Like, we'd walk in, there'd be notes on the board with what we need to do. We'd get it set up. He'd walk in. He'd go, okay, all right, thank you. And we'd leave. And then he'd come back. And then fucking Sign of the Times was recorded or some shit like that. It's just like, how was he doing that? You know? So I was just upset. There's no was. I am and always will be obsessed with this man because he is the pinnacle. To me, he is the pinnacle of a complete and total artist in every possible way. And a lot of people don't really talk about this, but he was innovative in the technology realm as well. Not a lot of people know this, but Prince was the first person ever to sell his music online. Ever. Nobody knows. I'm like, how do people not know that? How is that a thing? But he was the first person to make his music available for download online. The dude was an innovator on so many levels, and it's just it like boggles the mind. And as a guitar player myself, I'd always looked to people like Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page, and the list goes on and on of the namesakes of all that is guitar goddom. You know, right. I would look to those guys for inspiration, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's this guy, and he just keeps proving himself over and over and over. And the thing that I like about him the most is that he never really succumbed to the criticism of, well, Prince is overrated, Prince is this, Prince is that. He just kept making great music and playing and kept doing his thing. And, you know, he was a fantastic dancer, fantastic, entertainer. He had like a 6-octave vocal range, did all this stuff. And then on top of that, he's this incredible guitar player. Now, I've seen this guy do stuff on guitar because I've seen Prince live about 7 times. I've seen him do on film and in person, in real life. I've seen him do things on guitar that I've never seen Jimmy Page do. I've never seen Eric Clapton do. I've never seen some of my favorite guitar players, even Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie Ray Vaughan is like, he's like tickles the funny bone of all that goes in your ear holes, you know? And Prince he was just in a whole class by himself. The time I think about it, someone asks me, who's your absolute number one favorite person? And that would be him. So with that being said, he had a very, very intricate influence, very crucial influence on my musical upbringing. He was always the main say, well, how would Prince approach this? How would Prince do this? I was always reading what he wrote. I was always like, checking out his interviews. I was always just so big influence, but not the only influence, but the biggest. And then I listened to a lot of Bowie growing up. I listened to a lot of the Beatles growing up and the Stones. I listened to a lot of, and as I got older, I met incredible friends who introduced me to music that I probably wouldn't have even considered, like Rush and Tool and Dream Theater and all of these amazing bands that I'm just like, gobble, 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 gimme, gimme, cookie, cookie, cookie. You know, I'm absorbing it all so that I can find a way, because we as artists, we're in this constant state of trying to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Us, the best version of us. I don't want to be Lance, who is emulating David Bowie, or Lance, who is imitating the Beatles. I just want to be me. And I think the best artists find a way. They all did. They all did. The Beatles, the Stones, the Who, all these guys, they all found a way to take a little piece of all the stuff that they're hearing around them and turn it into something that is genuinely them. And that's all I've been trying to do pretty much my whole life,
Well, we talk a lot about I talk a lot about like collaboration, right? Like there's this thing where everyone thinks that they all have this original idea, right? But what I think that's great about music is that you can pull those things into what you're doing, and you can sound like I did listen to one of your songs. I was like, that sounds like Ben Harper to me. That's super cool. And then you play something else and it sounds like something else. And it's just like, I love it because there's all this, like, I got this from here and I got that from there. And you're creating your own thing, but using these tools that you found.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what it is, man. It's like, inspiration comes from so many different places, and it comes from so many different people. And when a person listens to my song, or any particular song, and like tonight I'm gonna be going on doing a TikTok live, and the goal of tonight's TikTok is to talk about my songs and the influences
Mhm.
from the songs. And I got the inspiration from the last TikTok I was on. People were asking me about the songs, so I was like, okay, I'll tell them about it. So I was like, oh, I could do a whole TikTok about that.
Yeah.
One song in particular, Epilogue, is a very moving story about the last great lesson of my mother to me and my brother. And my biggest influence at the time musically was Tool.
Hmm.
And so I explained to the TikTok audience at the time, this is what I was listening to. Now I want you to listen to the song again. I played Tool, and then I said, I want you to listen to my song again and see if you can hear the influence. And I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to do a whole TikTok like
That's
that,
awesome.
And so yeah, it's kind of one of those things where I listen to different things, and I went into detail about it. For example, the song is Sober, and I was talking about how in that song, how Maynard, you almost got to lean in a little bit to hear what he's talking about. His vocals are purposefully buried in the mix a little bit, because he actually talks about this in interviews sometimes. He doesn't do a lot of them, but when he does talk, it's really crazy. It's awesome stuff. But he likes to he wants his vocals to be a part of the tapestry. It's just another color on the canvas. It's not meant to be like a stage setting where he's standing out front and you can hear him clearly, and then everybody else is like sort of behind him an accompaniment. It's sort of like this interwoven painting, almost EDM, like blow your mind visually kind of situation, only musically. And I was like, that's some fascinating shit. I want to do that,
Right.
And so I think I kind of overdid it with my song to the point where you almost can't even hear what I'm saying in the song. But I really like that aspect of his approach to his vocals in that song, so I did it in my song. And I just sort of explained to people what I was doing, the meaning of the song, the inspiration behind the song, and so on and so forth. So yeah, man, music, that's my shit.
Yeah. It's awesome, man. Well, tell us a little bit about, so you've had a couple different bands, but right now the current one is the Circle View, right? Like, I mean, has that always been around, or
Yes.
is that just the latest iteration of what you're doing, or?
So what happened was, I started off as a solo artist, and then I had a band in college called the Red Meat Trio, and it was mostly like some jazz. I played a number of different genres because I'm a piano player. So I was in a
Right.
jazz band called the Red Meat Trio, and then it moved on to the Bow Boys, and that's my grandfather's nickname. So that was like a jam band with a horn section. And then my mom died, and then I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do something, because I was just, the truth of the matter is I was just fucking pissed. I was angry
Yeah.
at the world, and I wanted my music to reflect that. So I started a band called ODM, and that's kind of where this sort of current iteration of the music stemmed from. I wanted to do something a little bit more hard rock, a little bit more edgy. I wanted to talk about what I was feeling, because prior to my mom's death, I didn't know shit. I was a kid, so I just talked about happy shit all the time.
Mhm.
That's what you talk about when you're a songwriter. You talk about what you know. And I wanted to write music that was reflecting the pain. So ODM didn't last as a name. ODM didn't last very long, because I started to realize that there were a lot of things called ODM. And so I said, okay, so how about we name the band ODM Nation? So we renamed the band ODM Nation, and we were that for a while. And that was at the pinnacle of that band's sort of success rise. We were drawing like anywhere between 80 to 150 people per show. And that was great. It was fantastic. But then we started to get, along with that comes record deal opportunities and notoriety and stuff like that. So at the time, nothing's changed. I write most, if not all, of the material. I do all of the arranging. I typically play a lot. If I'm feeling it, I'll play all the instruments myself on a recording, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The band members at the time, which none of them are in the Circle View, it was a completely different band back then. But the band members at the time were getting frustrated with me because the requirements started to mount. My basic concept was simply this: if I'm going to be sharing any success with you, I feel like we need to like delegate some responsibility here. I kind of feel like I shouldn't be doing everything and you guys get to like sharing the spoils. You just show up and do what the hell I tell you to do.
Right.
And then like if we get a record deal, everybody's going to get a cut because everybody's name's going to be on the contract. So don't you think you guys should delegate? I'm just trying to delegate. They were not having that. They were like, "No, fuck that." So we had this big argument, and I learned something new that day. I learned something about the Illinois version of the Uniform Partnership Act, which states that if a person was present at the inception of a band, then and no contract was signed, then they have a stake, a legitimate stake in the success of the band, regardless of whether or not they did shit.
Yeah.
Just as long as they were there at the inception of the band, they have a say, they have a cut. So, me being the 20 something year old hothead that I was, I said, okay, then you can have the band. And I'm going to start a whole new band and go on because I knew I wrote all the songs.
You did it all.
I write all the songs. I'm the lead. Yeah, I did everything. So I said, you take these songs and go find another lead singer and you guys continue on as ODM Nation. And I'm going to start a whole new band and do a whole new shit because that is some bullshit, you know? And they were very, very upset with my response. And so we broke up. And from there is when I said I took about a year off, and then I said I just want to start fresh. I want to start something new and something different. And I had to sit down with my lawyer, my lawyer, my entertainment lawyer at the time. His name was Joseph Madonia, and he said, "So let me get this straight. You wrote all of those songs?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "You played most of the instruments on all those songs?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "So the songs are yours, copyrights in your name?" He's like, "So just change the fucking name of the band and just re-release all the shit as the Circle View."
Yeah.
What the fuck are you doing? Like, just keep the music. They didn't take the music. It's your music. You offered it to them. They didn't take it. So take those songs, retool the band. He's like, nobody even knows who the fuck you are. Like a handful of people in Chicago know who you are. The world doesn't know who you are. So what difference does it make if it's called ODM Nation or the Circle View or whatever? Take that stuff, turn it into the Circle View, and move on. And everything you create from now on, make it the Circle View. So I was like, that's a great fucking idea.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I did. So I took the one album that I did with ODM Nation and I made it a Circle View album, and everything after that was a Circle View album. And I held a and I met a bunch of different, on my band exploits, I've met a bunch of different musicians that I'd wanted to work with over the years, and one happened to come to my auditions, and that was Tom Howell. And had I known that he wanted to be in the band, I wouldn't have even held fucking guitar auditions because that dude was a badass from the beginning. I remember seeing him playing with his other band. I'm like, this fucking dude is amazing. So he actually didn't tell me he was coming. He just showed up and auditioned for the band. I was like, auditions are over. You got the guy. You got the gig, And we just moved forward, and we had a different bass player at the time, and he moved on, and then we found Chris. And the only thing that's sort of a continuing revolving door with the Circle View is the drummer situation, and that's a whole different podcast. I genuinely could do a whole different podcast on the drummer thing, but I'm not gonna go there. But yeah, it's weird, man. It's a weird the mind. Like one half of my brain, it's one of the reasons why I'm releasing a solo album in the spring, because one half of my brain knows that I have the capacity to do it all myself, but the other half of my brain grew up on the Beatles and the Stones and Prince and the Revolution and all these bands and Tool and Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Foo Fighters, all these bands. I love that idea of collaborating with people musically. I
Right.
love that idea of this sort of musical democracy. You walk into a room and somebody shares an idea and we create something that's bigger than us. I've always been attracted to that. So I said this year in 2024, I'm going to have the best of fucking both worlds. I'm going to do me, and it's going to just be me. I'm going to do the total Prince thing, something that I've always wanted to do because I've idolized this guy my whole life for that. And I committed to it and I completed it. I did from the rooter to the tutor, man. I did everything from song conception all the way to mastering. Nobody touched the solo album. It's all me.
That's
the
awesome.
circle view is slightly different. I'm doing, I'd say a lion's share of the work on the next circle view album, but Tom's going to be playing guitar a little bit. There's going to be some Chris bass on there. I'm playing all the drums on the circle view album. So there's no, again, whole other podcast. But I'm doing all the drums on the next circle view album. And it's mostly because, you know, that male ego, Wes, I tell you, it's a fucking thing. You know, it's a thing in the music industry. So
we won't get into it too much, but I feel like the drummer is
Yeah.
always the odd man in the whole deal anyway. So that's all we'll leave it at right there.
We'll leave it there.
We'll save
But
that
yeah,
for
it's
another
gonna be great.
podcast.
Please. And it's gonna. I'm coming with the fire too. So let me know when you're ready to talk drummers because I got it. Oh man, crazy stuff, man, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, since then, we've got to tour. I've got to see all of my country, which I'm really grateful for. I've gotten to see parts of Africa. I've gotten to see some of Canada. I've gotten to, to really branch out and play my music for an assortment of different people all over this great country of ours. And everywhere I've gone, the reception has been pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd say if I had to give it a number, I'd say the reception has been a solid 90%, solid A. I think if the band were a little bit more concrete, if there weren't a revolving door situation with the band members, I think people would gravitate towards us a little bit more, which is one of the reasons why I've sort of changed the imagery surrounding the circle view. I've sort of made everything, and this is not a narcissistic thing. This is genuinely a marketing move. I've made everything about me and my face as the consistent thing, because every time I do an album, you'll see when you get your copy of the stuff. Every time I do a new album, there's a different face on the record. I'm like, who's this fucking guy? And after a while, people get kind of like tired of that shit, and they're like, well, is the band him, or is it just him and a bunch of people that he just keeps surrounding himself with, and he just calls it the Circle View? There are consistent band members of the Circle View, Tom Howell being one of them, Chris McKenna on bass, Justin Shields on keyboards and effects. So those are my main guys right now. The only issue is the drummer thing, and I'm trying to nail down somebody that's gonna like really stick with the group, and really follow us into the fire, But right now it's just, I'm just looking forward to releasing new music and seeing how people respond to it. It's gonna be good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm interested because I've listened to a bunch of it. Like one day you were talking on TikTok about the amount of money that you make off of just a play on Spotify. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get this guy some play on Spotify because I've got a bunch of the albums on my Apple Music and I just go and I play and I don't ever I get lost in the fact of like listening to the name of the song, but I'm listening. Oh, that's pretty good. I like that. Like we played one on the Motivational Music Hour the other day and it was funny because I bet you wrote it right after your mom passed away because you're like, I had a few anger issues on that one. You were listening to it with us, and It was like, yeah, that's got to be it.
Yeah. It's actually, I think I know that it's the one where I'm saying I don't give a shit about your effing feelings.
That's it. That's the one.
Okay, so it's funny that you mentioned that because that whole story that I told you about the band breaking up, that's what that song is about.
Okay.
That's that. I was so fired up about, like, you know, how dare you guys come at me with these partnership act crap when you know damn well you've like been coming in here eating Cheetos and sitting on your ass, and I'm sitting here writing like a
Yeah.
fucking maniac trying to get shit done, you know.
And then you're
And
pissed when you have
so
to
yeah,
contribute a little bit. I mean, that's bullshit.
right, exactly. Like, I mean, damn it, you know. So I was now. With that being said, I remember the first podcast I went on was a buddy of mine, and I remember sort of like feeling the need to apologize, and I still do. I still feel the need to apologize because had I been a little bit more mature, I probably would have felt that differently. I probably would have said, okay, this is a legitimate thing. This is, you know, I respect your opinion, but I need you guys to understand my point of view, and I probably would have handled it a little differently. At the time, though, man, I was just pissed off and hot-headed. And, you know, Wes, what can I tell you, man? My mom had died. I was mad at the world anyway.
Yeah.
I just needed somebody to aim the cannon, you know? And they just lined themselves up perfectly, you know? So that's kind of how that went. But yeah, that's ad nauseum. And ad nauseum means, you know, you can hear there's a double meaning behind it. You know, I keep hearing they're bitching at me about this ad nauseum, you know, but I kept saying, I don't give a shit, I don't give a shit, I don't give a shit over and over and over again, ad nauseum in the song, to the point where it's like, is this guy okay? You know, so there's like double meanings within the song, but yeah, that's kind of what that's about. Yeah, I had issues back then, man, but I'm okay now.
Man, you know, the thing is like we all have issues, and it's funny because it makes you who you are today. Like, you may have not felt sorry about the way that you acted 20 years ago, but you're like, you know, that had to happen for me to be who I am now. That had to happen for me to be where I am today. It's crazy. So
yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, I love it, man.
What else you want to know?
Let's be a little bit cognizant of your time here, because I told you we're going to be 30. We're at 40 right now. So we will recircle, I think, is what we're going to do, because I feel like
that's exactly what we're going to do. I love that.
Yeah. I think that what we need to do is when you get the new music out, we'll talk about it. I think it'll be awesome to hear that new album and talk about it.
That's going to be fantastic. I love that idea. And the new single is called Our Love, and it'll be out on Valentine's Day, February 14th. It's a song that I wrote for my wife. There's going to be a follow-up single after that, and then the full album will drop sometime in May. And then right after that, I'm not effing around, Wes. Right after that, the Circle View single is going to drop, and then another Circle View single, and then the Circle View album is going to drop. And then it's just going to be a whole bunch of freaking live streams and shows and shit everywhere. So you're going to be getting tired of me after a while. It's going to be like, this fucking guy again.
Dude, I love seeing it. It's TikTok's one of those things I was talking about. I do a Wednesday show in the morning. I do a morning show, basically, is what I do. And Wednesday I have my friend Robert Watson on, and we were talking about how it's just like, it's one of those things, like it is gotta be there. And I don't know. I love it. Like, I think it's exciting to hear music. I can't wait till you drop it. And the next time that you're on, you got to sing something.
Yeah, man, I got guitars and shit all over here, right? Because I would gladly play you guys something.
Yeah, I had Jake Rose on, and he sang. He played Sleeves, and it was freaking cool to just see him. He's like, "Hey, you want me to play something?" I'm like, "That'd be awesome." And he popped it up and he played. And we got a lot of other things too. I do a live every Wednesday tonight in about an hour and a half on Instagram called One Drink Wednesday, and maybe you can hop on there sometime and jam out with us. It's a open invitation. You just come hop on there and follow on Instagram, and then you click the plus button and we'll let you in. Be fun.
Fuck yeah. Absolutely, man. Count me in. I'm gonna go and eat some dinner with my family, and if so you're going over to Instagram now in about an hour?
About an hour and a half, yeah. It's sorry, time zones are all weird. 7, 8, it'd be 9 your time. So
perfect. Yeah, that's about an hour before I'm going to go on. So yeah, I'll swing through.
Awesome, man.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, it'll be great. And yeah, I wrote a bunch of these songs down that now I have to listen to so that I can hear the influence. But I'm super excited, man. I'm pumped to hear it. I love talking to people who are passionate about music. And if anyone wants to find you, where can they find you? Where's the best place to get the music?
We are all of the music. It's the Circle View, and all of the music is available on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you stream music, you can find it. If you would like to, because I still have from our last tour, I still have copies, physical copies of CDs available. If you're old school, because I'm getting those DMs now. If you're old school, find the Circle View on TikTok and DM me and say, hey man, I would like a copy of this album or this album on CD, and I will gladly send it to you free of charge. No problem.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, Lance, I'm excited to have you back on again and kind of watch this happen for you and see where it's going. And listen to more of your music, man.
Thank you so much, Wes, for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. You have been so instrumental in my success on TikTok, and I am grateful for you, and I love you with all my heart, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. All right. Well, we'll hop on again soon.
All right. Peace, brother.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Awesome interview with Lance. It was really good to see him. Really appreciate him hanging out with us. And, you know, music is something that makes the world go round. You can check out Nikki Pavlovich and myself do Motivational Music Hour on TikTok every other Wednesday. Really fun time. Lance is there sometimes hopping in, listening to music, jamming with us. It's a really good conversation. Yeah, until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.